You recently wrote an article, Norman, called Bush's Mission Accomplished 20 Years Later. Can you talk to us a little bit about what Bush accomplished? Did he accomplish his mission?
Yes, people can find that article on progressivehub.net. I was really struck by the 20th anniversary, which recently occurred, of the mission accomplished speech that notoriously President George W. Bush gave on the deck of an aircraft carrier, the USS Abraham Lincoln, on May 1st, 2003. And he did that under a red, white, and blue banner that said mission accomplished. Since then, it's become notorious because obviously, from a military standpoint, the mission of the invasion of Iraq that had occurred in March of 2003, it was not accomplished. And resistance, insurgent, fighting back against the occupiers grew and grew. And there were several thousand American soldiers who died in that war. There were hundreds of thousands of Iraqis who died because of that war, because of the US invasion and occupation. And so, one line of analysis is to remind people that what Bush proclaimed turned out to be false. I think another line of analysis, parallel and arguably a lot deeper, is that the mission itself, whether it had been ultimately accomplished or not, was wrong and should have been rejected for many reasons because of the slaughter, because of the violation of international law, because it was based on lies methodically produced by the US government from the top down and parroted by news media. And so we have the sort of the traditional liberal media, centrist media critique that says, oh, Bush said mission was accomplished, but it really wasn't. That's true. That's something to criticize. But the underlying problem that we still need to illuminate and address is the assumption that the US military should have and does have the prerogative to intervene with weapons and troops as it deems necessary anywhere in the world that it thinks it can get away with it. And this is a notion that is deep, it is wide, it is tacitly and often explicitly accepted by the US media, or what might be called the military industrial media complex. Rootsaction.org is here to challenge those kind of assumptions. And we certainly hope that people will go to progressivehub.net on a daily basis and participate not only in learning more and seeing latest developments, but also, as you mentioned, Ryan, our articles virtually always have an action component where you can not only see what is wrong, but immediately help to do something about it.
That's right. And on your article, Bush's Mission Accomplished 20 Years Later, the action there is to ask your representative to commit to cutting the military budget by at least 10%, which is not enough, but it is a start. And if we could start building a coalition of electeds who actually want to cut the military budget, who actually want to take those billions and billions and hundreds of billions of dollars and redirect those towards human needs, towards education, towards healthcare, towards housing, towards food and sustainability and uh, green energy. That would be a much, much better use of the money. There's also an interesting, like, onion of lies in this narrative here. You know, I framed it ridiculously on purpose. Obviously, you can't have mission accomplished, so that's the first lie. And then under that was, how could you accomplish a mission when the mission itself wasn't possible? There were no weapons of mass destruction. If the mission was to prevent Saddam from using weapons of mass destruction, well, they didn't even exist. And then you go even deeper, the lie that it was okay for the United States to go there in the first place. It's a foreign policy built on unaccountable militarism. And it's going to take people like us. It's going to take people writing their senators and congresspeople and getting out in the streets and making noise and demanding peace for us to start building a society that cares about peace, right?
When we hear that Saddam Hussein was an evil tyrant, I certainly agree. I was in Iraq before the invasion. I saw the results of the tyranny, and it was a regime that tortured political opponents. If the US is opposed to that, as we should, then a first step would be to stop supporting regimes that torture, like in Saudi Arabia, for instance. So the imperial assumption that the US government should get to make things up as it goes along, have principles proclaimed and violating them at the same time, willy nilly, that just should not be accepted.
Right. Yeah. The idea of the United States always seems to support the International Criminal Court when they're going after one of our enemies, but the United States themselves are not signed on to the International Criminal Court and a
Yeah, well,
number of
really,
UN
by any
resolutions.
even handed standard, if Vladimir Putin is a war criminal because the invasion of Ukraine, and I think he is, then George W. Bush is a war criminal because of the invasion of Iraq. And you can ask yourself how many times you've heard such an assertion in the mainstream corporate US media. Probably the answer is zero.